Good morning, everybody. If you'd like to come and take your seats, we're about to start in just a moment. My name's Melissa Weston. I work here at Moreton Bay Regional Council. So thank you for joining us today for International Women's Day. Choose to challenge. You're going to hear that a lot for the rest of the morning. Before we begin, I would like to introduce Auntie Peggy Tiedemann to give an acknowledgement of country.
Thank you very much. Ugamindaya, Yuwala. In my traditional language, Gungri language, that is hello and welcome. I want to begin by first acknowledging the traditional owners of this land on which we are gathered today. And I acknowledge the Kabi Kabi, the Jindabara and the Turrbal people who have taken care of this country for thousands of generations. This was shared country. And as we travel across this land of ours, you will learn that a lot of our groups had shared country. And so depending on where we are acknowledging those various groups. I want to also pay respects to our elders both past, present and emerging. I want to acknowledge, first of all, my sister, who is here with me today, Auntie Kathy Jackson. But I also want to acknowledge all elders of other cultures, elders who have come maybe from other lands, but they are now here and call this land home. I also, as a cultural protocol, as an elder, the three main cultural protocols that I must observe. The third one is acknowledging sorry business. And so I just want to acknowledge all of the women that can't be here with us today for whatever reason. We want to acknowledge their work, their families, their children, their communities. And they are not forgotten. When we come together on International Women's Day, it is about a celebration of their life. I want to also say thank you to Caroline. Caroline, who is a friend of my sister and I, who actually first mentioned coming to today's event. And I was more than happy to come and join this group. I know that I may have some sisters here. I also want to acknowledge my sisters who may come from far away. This may not be their traditional land. It's not my traditional land. So I am a Gungri descendant. My traditional land, Auntie Kathy and I, we come from southwest Queensland. And our traditional lands lie west of Roma, east of Charleville. Who's been out that way? Okay, Carnarvon Gorge, beautiful country. And we go down to St. George. So that is Gungri country. We are the 6th group in Queensland to be granted native title. And by saying that, it is something that we value. Because while we said we knew who we were and our country, we knew where our country was, it still took us 24 years in the High Court to convince others that we are the First Nations people of that area. But as I said, we're Gungri descendants, we identify as Gungri, but that's our father's side. But our mother's people are Bidjara. And so that's around the Charleville area, the Blackall area. So we call ourselves dusty people. No, we come from the dust. But I've lived in Logan City for many years. And, while I may live here, I still call Mitchell my home. So my sister and I grew up on the Yumba. We grew up outside the township because we weren't allowed to live in the township. But we have very fond memories of where we grew up. because we had family with us. And that's one of the things that we cherish today, is having that extended family. So I know today is going to be a very interesting day, so I want to acknowledge the other members of the panel that are here with me today. I might let them do all the talking and then I can just sit and listen. No. But I want to acknowledge each of the other panellists for the stories that they will share with you today as well. I hope you do get, or you take away something from each of the speakers today, something that will encourage you, something that will help you on your journey. Because I think it is about women. There's a few brothers here, but it is about women coming together to have a voice. And I think that is critically important. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Auntie Peggy, and I would like to also just pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. And an acknowledgement of country is something that we make our own. So I often encourage groups to do something that we often do with children, but adults have said that they enjoy it too. So if you would like to, feel free to repeat after me. Here is the land. Here is the sky. Here are my friends. And so am I. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. Thank you very much. I love International Women's Day. My mum is Sri Lankan and I have a big family of strong international women, and 2 young daughters, so it's giving me great pleasure to say to them, choose to challenge. I'm going to do that all week. Don't forget to download our new app. It's the My MBRL app, and it's like having the library in your pocket. So download that and it will make your life far, far richer. Okay, that's about it from me. I am going to hand over to our panellists who you've all come to see, and I'm just going to introduce someone who would be well known to many of you, author, speaker, and woman extraordinaire, Madonna King.
Thank you. So good morning and welcome. And the first thing is Happy International Women's Day. Could I thank Aunt Peggy for your acknowledgement, acknowledging the traditional owners, and could I too join Peggy in doing that, particularly of the Moreton Bay region, the Cubby Cubby, Turrbal and Jinnabara people, and pay my respects too to leaders past, present and emerging. I call Roma home. That's where I grew up.
You're a neighbour. Yeah.
So my mother died a couple of years ago, and grief always passes, doesn't it, to some of those beautiful memories. And with Mum, it was sayings. And I remember as a teenager, Mum saying, look, you're as silly as a wheel. I got that quite often. Or on other occasions, she'd say to me, look, if Julie put her head into the fire, would you? When I was doing something my friends would. And every now and again, I'd get, watch it, Missy, you're skating on thin ice. So many of them, and you probably have your own. But last week, when I was thinking about today and what we talk about, I remembered one in particular, and it was, Madonna, the behaviour you walk by is the behaviour you accept. And with this year's theme on International Women's Day is choose to challenge. How might we choose to influence the behaviour of others? How might we challenge the behaviour of others? Perhaps in our families, certainly in our neighbourhoods, our local communities, or even further afield. Every individual brings a different perspective, and that has the potential to really make the difference to others. And our panellists today have certainly done that. So let me introduce these wonderful, strong leaders who have chosen to challenge beliefs and actions and behaviours to actually forge real challenge in their spheres. First, let me start with Jenny. Jenny Woolsey is an international author, a speaker, an advocate, and an educator on inclusive education, disability awareness and equality. And be weirdly wonderful is her motto, which I just love. Jenny, hello.
Hello. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to share my story with you as we go along.
Thank you. Aunt Peggy is a descendant, we heard, of the Gongari and Bidjara people from southwest Queensland, but her influence is so much wider, having represented First Nations people in countless roles at local, state and national levels. In 2018, she became the Logan Citizen of the Year, reflecting her long advocacy across women's rights, representation of First Nations people, domestic and family violence, just to name a couple of areas. Hello.
Hello.
And to Melissa Redsell, or Mel, is the founding director and CEO of A Brave Life, a not-for-profit charity providing practical, personal and positive support and mentorship to young women and mothers. And Mel, such an interesting area that we want to learn about. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And it is so wonderful that we are actually having this conversation in a library, because that really is the heart of the community we share, where we have that opportunity to learn, to connect, to build networks. And the proof of that is in this fact. You know, as the world faced disruption a few years ago, from Uber to Airbnb changing everything we do, our libraries were the one institution that became more popular. And there's a book called The 9 Hashtags of Digital Disruption. I only read it because it was authored by my husband. But he found the reason for that is that libraries was a place where people found trust. And there's few better places, I would think, to have an inspiring and thought-provoking discussion on International Women's Day than here at the library. So let's start by finding out a bit more about these wonderful women who've lived their lives choosing to challenge. And Jen, I'm going to start with you. You were born with a rare craniofacial syndrome. Are you comfortable with telling us just when did you first become aware of that? Where did that become part of your vocabulary?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in the 60s. I grew up in Caboolture, which back then was a very small town. I was born at the Royal Brisbane Hospital. I was born with a rare craniofacial syndrome called Cruzon syndrome. Also, my eldest two children also have the syndrome. I am called a random mutation, which means I just happen. So it's a genetic disorder where the gene changes. In those days, the more older people would know that there were no CT scans, no testing. So as you could imagine, to my parents, I was a complete shock. They could have made the decision to leave me at the Royal Brisbane Hospital, because back then, if you didn't want your baby, you could leave it behind. But Mum and Dad were adamant, no, they would take me home and they would give me the same life as my older two brothers. And I'm very thankful for that, because in those times, you know, there still were the freak circuses were still around. In the 70s, they were still around. So, and my parents were actually told by even older members of the community I should be hidden at home because of the way my face looked. Now, I do look different now because I've had surgeries to make my face look more regular, as I call it. I really remember being told by the community that I didn't belong when I was really little, because people would stare at me, and I still remember, like 3 years old, earliest memories of people pointing at me, people staring at me wherever I went. And Mum says when I was about 3, we were walking down King Street, which is the main street of Caboolture, and this lady, an adult, was staring at me, and apparently I went like this to her, and I followed her. So that's one of Mum's earliest memories.
So when, though, did it go from something that was a negative thing that was imposed onto you to something where you thought, I'm going to choose to challenge, I'm going to make a difference?
Well, my mum said I was always stubborn when I wanted to be and independent when I wanted to be. And I think I probably learnt that from my parents. They role modelled that to me. And Mum always said that as a teenager, even though I had like 2 personalities, so I had this acute social anxiety, but I also was very out there around my friends. But she said to me, whenever you really wanted something, you went and did it. You didn't worry about your face. And I think that's carried through. I was a primary school teacher at Strathpine State School for 25 years. And my heart was always for the children who were bullied and considered different and had disabilities. So I left teaching in 2014, and I now write children's books on differences in disabilities, and I go around and talk to kids. So it was in my rediscovery after leaving teaching that I decided now is the time for me, and my youngest daughter has Down syndrome, so my world, and I'm visually impaired, so my world is disability and difference, and I see all the discrimination, all the prejudice, all the barriers, and that is the goal for the rest of my life, is to make the world a better place for those of us.
I'm going to move on to our other panellists in one moment, but one more question. So do you think when you choose to challenge, it's something that you volunteer to do, or is it something that you think in your case was more forced on you by what you suffered, in a sense?
I think I volunteered to do it, because when I left teaching, I could have gone in any direction. But if there was a fire, I guess, because I got really involved in inclusive curriculum and inclusive school education with my daughter with Down syndrome, because I'm mainstreaming her. She's never been to the special school and she will never go to. We're going through a public high school. And that in itself has raised lots of prejudices and discrimination within the education system.
Yeah.
So I've actually made it a choice.
Okay, so good on you for the choices you've made. We're going to come back to you in just a moment, but can I jump, Mel, for one moment and go to Aunt Peggy? You said you were raised in Mitchell. But just tell us about the child, Peggy, and what your expectations of adulthood was then.
So, I better watch what I say because my sister's here.
Yeah, because I'll go to her for a right of reply if I need to.
No, we've both been on the same journey, but growing up in the 50s, it was a difficult time for lots of Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people. But I'll speak about Aboriginal people because that's where I come from. But growing up in a small community where a lot of the rights weren't free, a lot of those rights were taken away from us. So we really did struggle, and it was a challenge. So there were challenges in my life from an early age.
What was it about the young Peggy that wanted to make a difference?
I wanted to explore, and from an early age my mother would always say, make sure you get a good education. Yes. So to be able to achieve some of the things that I wanted to achieve, I thought that I could achieve, it was about education. And so I was very grateful, I am very grateful for having two strong women as leaders, and that's my grandmother and my mother, who inspired in me to do more, not only for myself, but for all of our people.
Is it easy in the sense that people want to change how they think and they don't know how? Or is it much more difficult to change people's ingrained views?
I think it's much more harder to try to get to change people's views. So over the years I have, my career path has taken me into many different fields within the community. So I discovered when I was working in the legal service, how do you change the system? How do you try to get better outcomes for our people? What are the things that we need to educate ourselves about? And so that was one part of it. Then I worked with Education Queensland for 32 years because I felt that was a place where we could make changes, challenge choose to challenge. And that's where a lot of my time and my effort was spent, working with our young people, giving them hope, giving them, that inspiration to achieve, to be the best that they could.
What do you think, from your perspective, is the biggest challenge going forward? Is it educating others too, or is it changing those big, weighty, monolithic systems?
That one. No. Yes, I think that I have become more politically aware.
Yeah.
And so while you can work at the grassroots level and you can work systemically, it's about how to influence that change where decisions are being made for you and about you.
Yeah.
And it's about how we have to have a voice. If we don't have a voice, how do we change things? So I have fought very hard in bringing about that change, even at that political level.
Yes. Do you think, I'm going off script here, but and Mel, next question's to you, do you think we're seeing all those thousands of schoolgirls pen those heartbreaking tales of rape and sexual assault at schools? They're finding their voice. Is that enough? Do we always listen to a voice, or does it depend on whose voice it is?
I think it is about having a voice, because when you're silenced, then you suffer.
Yeah.
The pain, and that's trying to overcome a lot of that pain. But I think as collective women's voices can make a difference, and we do need to have that collective voice about this is something that we will not tolerate. Our people have been speaking out against rape and violence since European occupation.
Yeah.
We have said it for so many years. And we now see 250 years later, someone is listening.
Well, I hope
so we need to make sure that we speak out very loudly about that.
Thank you. And Mel, I love how Peggy has kind of raised the idea that each of us have a role here. What do you do? Tell us the impetus for what you do.
Yeah, so I run an organisation called A Brave Life that was birthed out of my own journey of being a teenage mum. So I grew up in Townsville, North Queensland, and in a home filled with domestic violence. It wasn't uncommon to be whisked to safe houses in the middle of the night. And then I fell pregnant in my last year of high school. So I have a 26-year-old daughter, and I graduated high school 7 months pregnant, and was constantly told that I'd ruined my life, that my life was now over, and just faced tremendous amounts of stigma and judgment. But I didn't want to let those comments define my future. So I enrolled in university with a 1-year-old, and I'm a registered nurse, so I did nursing with her and then went back to become a midwife. So I've been working in that field for 21 years, and back in 2015 I really wanted to really break down that stigma and judgment that teenage and young mothers were facing, and knowing the power that education had in my life, I really wanted to be able to empower other young women that were in similar situations, that your life is not over and you will be able to pursue all the dreams and goals that you have.
So sell your organisation to us. What does it do?
Yeah, so we're a little bit twofold. So we do a mentoring program that works with teenage and young mums that are either in high school, at university or TAFE, or looking to re-enter the workforce. And then we do a baby bundle program. So we believe that no mother should be without the essentials that she needs for her newborn baby. And as a midwife, I would see so many women turn up to hospital with next to nothing, whether that was fleeing from domestic violence, just their background circumstances, or just not knowing what they needed for their newborn. So we're partnered with every hospital, young parent program, community organisation right across Brisbane.
So we can picture the young women needing assistance. Who are they? Are they from a similar socioeconomic group? Are they from families of violence? Are they from families who haven't had the opportunity for education? Does it span all of those?
It does. And so I think most of it, a large majority of the young women that we work with are from generational cycles where, they don't have that educational opportunities, or their mum may have been a young mum themselves. So, but then that's not always the case. I think sometimes we have this stereotype of what a teenage mum looks like or what she's supposed to be. We class her as the naughty girl, the girl that didn't know any better. But sometimes I think it's so easy to judge people before we actually know their story. Like if we actually hear somebody's story and we know what they've been through.
And is the community still really harsh in its judgment?
Yes. We've come a long way. I'm not going to say that we haven't come a long way, but the same judgment and stigma I faced 26, 27 years ago is still being shown to teenage and young mums today. The comments are still the same. They look at them a certain way. And it really just astounds me that we're a society that judges so much on what we see.
How young are some of the girls you are helping?
13 and 14.
Do you think it's important for women to support other women? And are you finding in some instances that too often perhaps that's where some of the harsh judgment comes?
Yeah, I think it's really important for women to support women. I think it's that we need to come alongside other women and champion them along. I think, there's so many incredible young women out in the community, and if they just have somebody to come alongside them, like I say to young women, I'm your biggest cheerleader. I'm going to be there. Imagine me on the sidelines with some pom-poms, just cheering you along. So I think that, I think in society we need other women to just really believe in other women and let them know that, we are here no matter your circumstances, no matter what's going on.
You'd be a fantastic cheerleader on the side for that. But, and you say this as though it's quite simple, but you have been through so much yourself in family violence, in deciding to do this, in seeing what you do, in helping young women. Has there been a time, really honestly, where you've wanted to give up, that the problem is bigger than you can deliver?
100%. I think just even starting an organisation, my background's nursing, midwifery. I'm not business-minded. That was my intention was just to use my story to inspire and encourage others. I never saw it going into becoming an organisation. It can be overwhelming. I have times where I say to my husband or my family, I don't want to do this anymore, but then, there's just that one girl that may send us a message because she's received a baby bundle. And I've never met her and she's never met me, but she just said how much it really impacted her. Or we watch a young mum graduate from high school that we've walked alongside for 2 or 3 years, and I'm like a mum watching my kids go and graduate. So, you have all these beautiful moments along the way, and I think that's what we've got to focus on. If we focus on the big picture and we get overwhelmed by it, if we focus on the one person and that one particular life, it's really amazing.
Thank you. So, Jenny, can I go to you on the same thing? Mel's been talking about the influence one person can have. Have you got a story you can tell us about the influence a single person can have on others?
I have to spruik my book because my story goes, this is the very first novel I wrote, which is you can borrow from the library, called Ride High Pineapple, and the main character, Izzy, has myocraniofacial syndrome. If you've read the book Wonder, it's on the similar lines, but it's about teenagers. And a lot of the schools, are starting to read it alongside Wonder. And I go into schools and I talk about facial differences. And I remember doing a talk, and I also talk about disabilities, and being different is awesome and great and empowering the children. And I remember at one school a couple of years ago, a little boy was there putting his hand up and telling me all sorts of things, and I just thought, but he's really into it. And afterwards, the teachers came to me and said, he never speaks. You empowered him so much that he wanted to put his hand up He had apparently had autism, never spoke a word, but identified with me, and the other kids saw that. So that is why I thought, yes, I need to continue this.
Absolutely. Aunt Peggy, how do we corral that individual influence and empower communities to change things, whether it is in terms of reconciliation or what we're seeing unfold in Canberra now?
Well, I'd like to just share something that over the years I've worked with Education Queensland for 32 years, and I've worked with a lot of young people, had those same conversations, about how do we change the system, how do we challenge things that we see that are unjust. And over that time, I've listened to the cries for help from a lot of our people. And so the work that I'm doing now is around spiritual healing. And we know that over a long period of time, there's been a lot of that trauma, that intergenerational trauma, that a lot of our people have suffered. But it's also about working with other people within our community around gaining that trust. It is about reconciliation. It's also about truth-telling. We can't move forward unless we know what the truth is. And so I do spiritual healing for a lot of our young people in particular. We see that they may have lost their way. Yeah. So their cultural identity is something that they are on a journey. They're looking to find out about their culture because they've been separated from culture. And so in our culture and our communities, we believe that we have to know who we are and where we come from so that we can move forward. And through the spiritual healing that I do, I often share with, and it's adults as well, we can heal ourselves physically and we can heal ourselves mentally. How do you heal the spirit? And from a lot of the work that I do, it is about healing the spirit of our young people. And not just the young people, it's all ages.
Thank you. Mel, Aunt Peggy talked about education before, and I remember when I was a young journalist, I was sent to the Magistrates Court for 6 months, and the overwhelming theme to me was not the theme in the people appearing there was a lack of education. They couldn't spell. Some didn't know what the word guilty meant. They certainly couldn't speak in full sentences. I just wonder about the power of education in a community to forge change. You're dealing with some girls who haven't had an education. Just tell me the role of education in what you do.
I think exactly, education's so powerful, and we work with a lot of young women that have dropped out of school, haven't completed year 8, 9, 10, and then they're coming back to do year 11 and 12. So we have to work really closely with them with tutoring and stuff to provide that. But there isn't a huge amount of schools, and I think that goes like with Jenny sometimes, that being inclusive, there's not a whole lot of schools that will cater for teenage and pregnant mums. So, that we're very limited, especially in Brisbane, where they can go. And then if they do go to them, they feel that stigma and judgment. So I feel like we're kind of really lacking in an area of providing those educational opportunities and pathways for them. So we're currently working closely with the Sunshine Coast University to make sure that the teenage and young mums do have those accesses.
We've been talking a little bit about systemic change, which is quite scary because each of us sitting here is thinking, how can I contribute? In terms of education, what can each of us do? Is it a commitment that people we know are able to read widely, or is it about, we're in a library, is it about reading books? So, is there something from your experience of those girls who want to come back and be educated? What's the fire in their belly?
Well, the reason they want to come back, I guess, is for their children. So I guess that's the biggest thing, and that would come back to my own motivation for going on to continuing with high school and then going to university. But I think if you do meet a young mum that you just really encourage her and come alongside her, and if she doesn't have those opportunities, you look at what those pathways are. Like, what is out there in the community? How can we help you? How do you get to them? You know, transport's a massive issue. How are you going to get to and from school? Like, I would catch 2 buses when I went to university, a bus to drop my daughter off and then a bus to get to university. And you know, it was a choice that I had to make, a choice to challenge in the circumstances, and it's very easy to give up when you face those initial challenges. So I think if we can try and instill in them that, I guess too, it is okay if you fail, like it's okay, or if it takes longer, life's not a race. I look back at my own journey, and I failed first year science when I did nursing because I was 18 years old with a 1-year-old, and I thought, oh, you just study the night before, don't you? Like for a massive big science exam at university. I got a very rude shock and had to repeat first year science. And I'm glad I stuck at it because I could have failed and I could have just dropped out. But it really is just instilling that confidence and empowering women and people in general that it's okay if you fail, it's okay if it takes longer, it's okay if you don't know something, and it's so okay to ask for help.
I would so like to take you home to do my kids' homework with them tonight. So, Jenny, can I go to you? We're talking about kids and education. You go into these schools. What's the most common questions you get asked by young children? Because often that raises the honesty, doesn't it? That they say what everyone is thinking, what their parents are thinking.
Well, because I show graphic photos of people with facial differences, the children are generally shocked and they react just like the rest of society does. And so I show them pictures of cleft lip palates, pictures of port wine, people with port wine stains, people with a variety of craniofacial syndromes. And yes, it just still interests me how shocked the children are, because you may or may not be aware that Hollywood portrays villains with facial differences. And it's kind of ingrained in our society that if you have a scar on your face, or you have, Bell's palsy or something different with your face, that you must be a horrible, evil person. And so I think the shock value just shows me that we have still got, along with everything, we still have a very long way to go.
But do you think, are you optimistic of the trajectory where we are going? That things like NDIS and other things have made us have these conversations?
I think we are going in the right direction, definitely, yes.
Yeah. What about you? How optimistic are you, Aunt Peggy?
Very optimistic.
Tell me why. What's the basis for that optimism?
I can see that while there are a lot of challenges ahead for many young people, there's also a lot of opportunities that, given the right sort of advice and leadership, that they can achieve their goals in life.
Where do they get that leadership from? Is it families or?
There are various places and opportunities for them to do that. Like Auntie Kathy and I were at a ceremony earlier it would have been late last week, that we had over 300 First Nations students that were given the opportunity with a scholarship. Now, scholarships weren't around in my day. They were given the opportunity of a scholarship to help them with their education, to be able to take on those challenges, to be what they want to be. And that is something that is very inspiring. The parents are there, the schools are there, they're very supportive. Schools are right behind these young people who want to think outside the box.
And what kind of gratitude are you seeing in the young people?
Well, a lot of these young people, it's just the opportunity to be there with their parents, witnessing it.
But are they seeing beyond, are they taking the blinkers off and dreaming big and seeing the influence they may eventually have too?
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
They may be the first person in their family that has reached, say, year 12.
Yeah.
I am the first one to be able to achieve, year 12 education. And they want to be able to pass that on to the younger generation.
Yeah. I want to go to your questions in just a moment, but can I ask you if there was a view in this room or more broadly in the community that you most wanted to change and we're choosing to challenge, what is the view you would like to challenge?
That's a hard one. There's so many that, you could probably think of, but I think that, I think it's about equality, respect.
Yeah.
If you don't have that in society, then we are going to be basically, going around in circles. Respect and equality for everyone, and our society doesn't always demonstrate that.
Yeah, absolutely, across a whole lot of issues. Jenny, what about you? Do you think everyone in this room, everyone can choose to challenge in their own way, or is it something that really some people can do quite easily and other people are never going to be able to take that position?
Oh no, I think everyone is able to choose to challenge, even if it's a small way, even if it's just a comment to someone like, I hate this word retard. That is still prevalent in our society. Kids in the playground are calling each other retards, and if you don't know where that goes back to mental retardation, which is what children with Down syndrome were classified as. So if you're calling someone a retard, you're actually being derogatory towards them and people living today with intellectual disabilities. So even just making children aware and people aware of words they're saying, even the barriers, like if someone is in a wheelchair and they can't get into a building, just advocating for them. I have a vision cane, a long cane. That's another thing. The children in the schools do not know what a long cane is. I asked them, what do you think this is? What's it for? And most of them just know a walking cane. They don't know one for vision. I think there's lucky to be one child who knows. So even just talking, if you see someone with a disability, talking to your children about what their disability is, and that just go and talk to them, say hello to the person, even if they're non-verbal. They still need to be treated with respect, and you can still talk to them.
Terrific answer, thank you. Mel, before we go to our audience questions, can I just ask you this? If you're in the audience and you're thinking, well, what can I offer? I want to choose to challenge. Where do you start?
I think we all have a story. I think each and every person in this room has been through something, knows something different, has something different to bring to the community and society. So I think it's just using what you've got in your hands, what your story is, and imparting that to somebody, because you really just don't know what somebody's going through, and what you have to offer them may just be the key to unlocking something in their life. So I think it's really, using your story, using what you have, and just making a local impact.
And even looking out for each other, perhaps.
Oh, 100%, looking out for people, because I think, and I think we're all sort of talking, we've all got coming on the panel from different views, but I think overall we're all saying, you know, that in being inclusive, not being judgmental, being respectful, that we're all just doing that with each person.
Yeah, well, more than that, you have similarities in that you're all awesome and you've all used your own personal experience to make life better for those who follow, which I just find really quite inspirational. So who's got a question that they would like to ask one of our wonderful panellists? And if you don't, I'll just start picking on you. So who'd like to go first? Thank you. I'll do this one if you like. Oh, are you right? Oh.
Madonna, you're very important.
Okay, I'm very important. Did you hear that?
Yeah, well. Have we got this happening? Okay. This has all been disinfectant and everything. Who has the question? There we go.
I have a question for Auntie Peggy. I'm really interested in the present and future of religion and spirituality. And I work at a library, at Moreton Bay Libraries, and I'm really interested to hear from you what libraries might be able to do to incorporate more cultural storytelling, but also spirituality into programming, into content, and yeah, into what we do here.
I think it's really important that, you know, all children have the opportunity to access resources in the library that they can relate to. So if you have an Indigenous background, look at the content or look at the resources that the library may provide. Engage with your community, engaging with people at the local level around what do they see as some of the things that they would like to see introduced into libraries. And I think it's, I have worked at other libraries where it's a regular thing. So contact with the local community on a regular basis. How well does the library engage with their local Indigenous community? But that's to do with you know, literacy and numeracy. How do you improve the literacy and numeracy for a lot? Well, mainly literacy.
Yeah.
But how do you improve that opportunity for young people to be able to have access to books that they can read at their own level? But it's also about adults too, being able to access library resources that will help them on their journey in life.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of people can't afford to go out. It's all about economics. If they can't afford to go and purchase certain things, they will go to the library to access those resources. But in terms of religion, that's probably something that I don't want to touch on. But I'm a very spiritual person, and I come from that background of what I've been taught, and then how I might be able to share that with other people to help them have to be more informed, I think, about that.
Thank you for that question. And you know the importance of libraries, full stop, in just, you know, when we were young, wouldn't you go to a library? You'd borrow your books, you'd take them home. And the first time I introduced my children to the local library, they're going, what, we've got to give them back? And I said, yeah, but we're not paying for them to begin with. And it is just a wonderful place where people gather, isn't it? So it's a great starting point. Who else has got a question? Thank you. Thanks, ma'am.
I'm interested to know, have the panel raised their children to choose to challenge? And do you think you've been successful? Maybe start with Mel.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, definitely. So I have 3 children. They're 26. My son's nearly 20 and my daughter is 16 in year 11. 100%, especially with my 26-year-old. My biggest thing was to see her graduate from university. From high school. She did go on to university, but she now gives back to the charity as well. So she works very closely with a lot of our young mums. She's highly intelligent. I don't think she gets it from me, but she's really, really smart. And the girls just love her because of she's closer to their age as well. So, yeah, I find just getting her involved, and even with my other two, I'm constantly telling them. My son had severe dyslexia. We were talking about this earlier, and at school, and he managed to get through year 12, and he's now in the Australian Army. So, you know, we just keep championing him along as well.
Yeah, that's terrific. Jen?
Yes, so as I said earlier, my nearly 20-year-old and my 17-year-old have microneofacial syndrome, and my 13-year-old, nearly 14-year-old, has Down syndrome. So they have all had significant bullying all the way through school, and they've had a lot of trauma because of that, and they've also had different surgeries and things. They all suffer from, well, my youngest doesn't, but the eldest two suffer from mental health issues and mental illness, mainly because of the treatment they've received from society. And they see me. I'm trying really hard to be their role model as a strong woman who is going out there and facing the world. And I always, it's the same thing, championing them on, because it's not easy for them because they're still, you know, young.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. What about you? Do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, I think
Just briefly.
I think for me it's with each generation within my family, there are more opportunities. So for me, it was very hard. Just limited education. My parents were the same. Limited education. Then there was improvement with the next generation. My children are in their 40s and 50s. My grandchildren. And I can see the difference in their dreams and their aspirations because they want to learn. They want to push the boundaries. They don't want to be, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be on the dole.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do something more meaningful in life. And so my grandson's just turned 20, but he's had his dream since he was probably about 7.
Yeah.
He wants to join the army, and that's exactly what he's done.
Good on him.
So he has had a goal in life that he could aim towards.
Yeah.
And that was through family saying, well, Granddad joined the army.
Yeah.
And, you know, these are things that sometimes our other young people don't have.
And it's that power,
yes.
power of role modelling.
Yes.
Thank you. Terrific question. Who's got another one? A final question from someone? Okay, so I'm going to ask a final question of each of you. Aunt Peggy, we're among friends, and I know, you know, from what you've said, you've been quite humble in your approach. But when you look back, where can you see that you personally have really made a difference when you've chosen to challenge?
I believe it is the work that I have done in education. So I see a lot of those young people who were challenged by the system, but with the support of, and it's holistic support, I think, for them. Seeing them come through the education system and be able to walk proudly in society.
Yeah.
That they aren't, you know, they can walk tall and proud of their achievements. And they have had to fight the hard battles to get there, as some of the other panellists have said. It's quite daunting. You know, we have young mums that are wanting to complete their education too, but where do they go to? So it's putting them in touch with education services where they can go back and complete that education. So just being a part of that process, helping them find their way to a better future.
Thank you. Good on you. Jenny, can I ask you the same question? Your literal proudest moment. When was it? What was it? Tell us.
Oh, I have to say yesterday. So my youngest daughter has Down syndrome, is swimming in the Special Olympics state games in 2 weeks' time, and they had the opening ceremony yesterday. And I didn't realise the impact that my daughter is making on people's attitudes towards Down syndrome, because again, 9 out of 10 prenatally diagnosed babies with Down syndrome are aborted in this country, and it's just due to lack of, poor attitudes and lack of education of what they are able to achieve. So go, Jessica.
And are you, yes, go Jessica, and are you, can you be really honest, one of those crazy mums in the swimming stand
I will
screaming?
be. I will be.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll be with you in spirit. And Mel, so it's lovely to come and listen to this and to think, those wonderful women, they've navigated this change from their own deeply personal experiences. But when we all wake up in a week's time, or when we walk out of here, what advice would you give us in choosing to challenge? Sorry, it's a difficult one, but it's lovely to listen. It's going to be better for us to act.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to your own situation and circumstances and where you are at in life. But if I can just leave you with one little example of something, I suppose relating back to the organisation, we met a young mum who received a baby bundle a couple of years back through a hospital, and then we hosted a baby bundle drive back 2 years ago, and she was in a better, where people in the community could come and donate items, and she was in a better situation financially, and she donated through that and pretty much filled the box, her and her mum, because she was so grateful for what she'd received. So she then got in contact with us, and she's now one of our main volunteers and pretty much helps run our baby bundle program, and is in her second year of university to become a registered nurse. So I think when you go out there in a week's time, I think, like I said before, just look at what's in your own backyard, your own community, your own environment, what your skills are, what your story is, and just use that, because you really just don't know the impact that it's going to have in somebody's life.
Yeah, and I wonder about even telling our own children or grandchildren about wonderful women like this. Can you please put your hands together for Mel, Jenny and Aunt Peggy? So my takeout here is that change starts with each of us, and it can be a tiny change that leads to another change. It's like throwing a pebble into a pond and then seeing that ripple grow. Thank you too for being our date this International Women's Day. If you haven't grabbed your morning tea earlier, please do that now. You can also take a selfie with the hashtag selfie cards on the book display table. Please post them to social media, remembering to tag Moreton Bay Libraries. I've really enjoyed our chat today. I hope you have too. A big, fat, happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.